Tim from Everyday Tactical Vids here. Today we're taking a look at a product from our friends over at Condor Outdoor. You're probably familiar with lots of their tactical items. They make mag pouches, bags, slings, all kinds of things. Today obviously we're taking a look at their folding knife, and this is the Barracuda Plain Edge, model number KF1001. This also does come in a serrated option as well. They market this as an EDC utility knife, and so we're going to take a look at some of the specs on it, and I'll tell you how it is held up as I've used it for the past couple weeks as my EDC knife. Some of the details on the knife. First, your blade is AUS 8 blade steel. It's sandblasted. Your hardness rating is between 57 and 59. You do have black G10 scales here for your handles. You do have a pocket clip, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 options for how you can actually carry it. Inside, it is a liner lock, and it's very easy to close up. As far as deployment, you do have the thumb studs on both sides, and you also have, you can see here, you have the flipper, and we'll talk about that as far as deployment in a minute and how that has been a little bit challenging on this knife. You also have a lanyard hole here at the back, and you can see that through, and that is 3/16 of an inch as far as the diameter of the lanyard hole. Your end-to-end length is 8 inches, your blade length is 3.3 inches, and your folded length is 4.5 inches, and it weighs 4.3 ounces. Now again, you can get this with a plain edge, as you can see here, or a partially serrated edge. Let me tell you some of the things that I have liked about it, just taking it out of the box and using it a little bit. First, I do like the Condor logo that they've actually put on there. That's a nice little extra bonus feature. Another thing that I do like is the shape of the blade. Some people like this style, some people don't. For me personally, I think that's kind of a cool style. Not nearly as pronounced as something like the Ken Onion Foresight or the 0350 or 0200 from Zero Tolerance, but it does have a little bit deeper of a belly, which I kind of like. So that's one of the advantages for me, at least. I have also found that the lockup, let me just give you a shot there. The lockup is quite good. The liner lock does land in a good location, so sometimes you have ones that go over too far and they get jammed, or not far enough and you're worried that it's going to collapse on you. I found that the liner lock does actually land in a good position for this knife. Looking at the handle here a little, you can see again it is G10, and if you look you can see that they have contoured it out on the bottom there, as well as, let me get the lighting right for you there, you can see a little bit here on the top and here as well. And that's true on the other side as well. You can just see how the light falls, contoured on the bottom and then on the top. They could have done a little bit better job maybe rounding out these edges on the outside, not so much on the inside there, because obviously you have the liner, but no major issues. It doesn't give me, it's not a ton of pain, it doesn't scratch your hand or beat your hand up terribly, but could have been rounded out a little bit more on this. One thing I will note is that other than your jimping up here, which isn't super aggressive, no jimping really anywhere other than right there on the liner. So I prefer to have a little extra here and maybe a little bit on the top as well, but so not super aggressive jimping. Again, this isn't a, I wouldn't call this like a tactical folding knife. They call it an everyday carry utility knife. So they didn't put a ton of jimping on it. That shouldn't be a huge issue, but if you do like a lot of jimping on your blade, then this might not be the right choice for you. Let me talk a little bit about my experience using this knife as my EDC blade for the past couple weeks. The first major issue that popped up for me was the deployment. The thumb stud works fine. You can swing it open with the thumb stud. Nice and easy. That locks into place. The flipper, on the other hand, not so much. So this is actually pointing down, so we're trying to get gravity to work with a little bit. But just using the flipper to open it really doesn't, at least with mine, it has not opened unless I give it a real, if I swing it out, it'll lock into place. And again, it locks in nice and firmly once you do that, but at least from the factory, the flipper really, it'll start to deploy it, but you really got to swing it out like that if you want it to lock in. So it's not necessarily a make or break deal, but you do have other companies out there who make knives that have the flippers built in that actually really work well. Sometimes they have a spring mechanism in them, or they're just very smooth opening. This one is not so much. Let's take a look and see how the edge comes from the factory. A lot of people like the paper test to see if you can actually cut paper. For me, the bigger question is, after you use the knife and beat up on it for a while, how does it retain the edge and then cut paper. But let's show you how it actually works. I have used the knife a little bit, so it's going to be a little more dull than the straight factory edge, but you can see here, still does cut quite well as far as paper goes. Do some testing now just to see how it does cutting wood. So this is the factory edge. I haven't put any edge on this. I haven't sharpened it at all. I always like to test my knives right from the factory just to see how the edge is. It clearly needs to be sharpened a bit, but it can cut. Now I'll do a little bit more fine work here, just maybe see if I can get some shavings. Here's what that looks like. As you can see, it actually works a little bit better for the fine work than it did for some more significant whittling. If you were making, tent peg or something like that out in the woods, this was much easier to do. Let me hold that up for you again. That was much easier to do than trying to really trim this end down. Now I'll work on the tip a little bit just to see how well it holds up. This point looks pretty good. That seems to be quite good. So the tip, no issues whatsoever as far as strength or stability. So as we conclude here talking about the Condor Barracuda, I guess what I would say is this. This is kind of a middle-of-the-road, basic EDC knife. There are knives that are more expensive than this. There are knives that are less expensive than this. You can get a Kershaw for a little bit less than this and get the quality and the backing of Kershaw. You can also pay a little bit more than this and get something like a Spyderco Tenacious, or if you want to move into SOG, it's going to run you a little bit more to maybe get the Trident or something like that. My EDC knife is this Benchmade Griptilian. So I use this for a lot of tasks. I'm not particularly gentle on it, but this ran me about 90 bucks as opposed to, $30 for the Barracuda. So that's just something you need to keep in mind. I would say for me, when it comes to this knife, this would be an EDC knife if I was carrying it that I'd be very comfortable beating up on. It's a pretty rugged blade. It's a pretty rugged build. And because it's $30, I don't feel like I have to be terribly, terribly gentle with it because I haven't dumped a ton of money into actually using it. The other thing I'll note, just having carried it around for a while and using it, the pocket clip is quite, it's quite secure when it's actually in your pocket. So just keep that in mind. I did have to kind of pry out. I'll show you here. Pry out a little bit and then actually remove it. And then the other thing I'll say is that I used it quite a bit and kept using the flipper, and I still can't get it to swing totally open. Now again, I haven't put any kind of oil in there or anything to get it to move more smoothly or loosen this up or done any adjustments basically. But at this point, even with a solid push, it's about as far as it goes. So you swing it out and that'll pop out, but just something to know because there is no spring system or anything that's really assisting as you try to flip the blade out. You really gotta swing it if you want to get that blade to pop out. So there you go, Condor Barracuda. It's going to run you probably around 30 bucks or so. And hope you appreciated the review. Let me know thoughts and feedback if you have this knife or if you're looking at this knife. As always, we invite you to subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Tumblr. More videos coming soon. Take care.